Welcome to Voices That Matter, a space where inspiration and lived experience come together. Today, I'm really honored to be here with Jonas Rydell, Montana influencer and a deeply inspirational human being. Jonas, for people who might be meeting you for the first time, can you walk us through a few key points or milestones in your life and share how they shaped who you are today?
Of course. As you were saying, I am from Montana. I grew up here. It's definitely a very small town vibe. Uh, it was industrial driven, just like aluminum plant, woodworking places, and things like that. My dad actually worked at one of those plants. My mom was the drummer to a country band, so I got a little bit of a taste of kind of a lifestyle of being in front of people, in front of a crowd and whatnot, going to see my mom play music and whatnot, which I later picked up a little bit in my 20s and whatnot. But I'll just kind of start from I went to school in Columbia Falls, Montana. I graduated with high honors. Ended up going to college and getting a degree in human health and performance, which is it was a prerequisite for physical therapy, but I didn't go to grad school, and I just wanted to get out of college, so I left with basically the ability to be a personal trainer, and moved down to California and moved down to some other cities, Las Vegas, Spokane. Tried to be a personal trainer. Um, I was in my early 20s, so I partied a lot back then, but I didn't really have any problems with addiction or anything like that. I just liked to have fun at that point in my life. I ended up coming back to Montana and getting into bodybuilding, and this was before it was really popular on the internet. Doing bodybuilding shows where you basically get on stage and flex and whatnot. Really put my whole personality into to this, and I wouldn't know until later on in life how important it's important not to do that with something. I put my whole heart and soul into it, everything, and did some bodybuilding shows and whatnot. And about 3 or 4 shows in, I learned that you needed to take, PEDs, steroids, basically, if you wanted to be some sort of professional. And so I decided that was the direction I was going to take. And I didn't really know much about them or anything at that point, and just went full force into it. And I did start getting pretty muscular really fast, way faster than you would naturally. And then I ended up having a lifting injury where I was bench pressing and I basically tore my whole pectoral muscle off my shoulder. And I hadn't had a problem with addiction prior to that and whatnot, but I ended up tearing it off, and then they reattached it, and I had a few surgeries, in which case they were giving me opiates. Now, I didn't really know what opiates were at that point in my life. I just knew they helped with pain. And I had 3 surgeries. I start getting back into lifting again, and then I tear it off again because I wasn't following you know, their their regiment that they had given me for physical therapy and whatnot. I just kind of went back into lifting really heavy again and tore it off again. So then I ended up having 4 more surgeries, and this whole ordeal was 2 years. So what happened was, over those 2 years, I started taking a lot of opiates. They kept giving me painkillers, and I didn't really notice I was addicted to them until they basically took them away from me. They were like, well, you're all healed up. But during that time, it was kind of a perfect storm because I had put all my whole heart and soul into bodybuilding, and not only the injury and the pain from the injury, but I was going through a lot of emotional pain too because I couldn't do what I loved. And that was the end of that pretty much for me in my head. I thought, this is it. I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. And I just kind of went down into a dark spiral mentally and kind of just closed myself off to the world, and like I said, started taking opiates all the time and whatnot. So they quit. The doctors quit giving me painkillers, and at that point, I was not done taking them. So I started getting them on the streets, and then I started not being able to afford to get them. So that really kind of snowballed fast into I was getting them at a good price from a different place, and somebody had been like, "Well, you can sell these here." So before I know it, I'm a full-blown drug dealer. And didn't last long. I was about a year and a half into it. I get busted. I go to prison. I do 3 years in prison, and during that time, I was able to really just kind of rebuild myself, my mental health, my emotional health, and there was some really big moments during that time in prison that were really key points that really helped me, I guess, become more self-aware and I don't know, gain the strength back. I don't know what you would call that with myself, but I did a lot of reading, and I came out of prison. I would say just a completely different person, different outlook on life. And I mean, I still have moments where I get stressed and depressed and whatnot, but nothing to the level that I had before that. I wouldn't say that it like mentally cured me because you can't be cured of anything really, but my outlook on life is just so much different now. And I've been out now for 5.5, 6 years, and my life's just been great. But I've made good decisions about my life, and I still know that I need to, kind of do mental exercises for myself so I don't fall back into those making mistakes like that and whatnot. But that's kind of the quick version of it. Since I got out of prison, I went back to school. I became a controls engineer, and I started making funny videos online, and they just kind of took off. And it's been crazy how far they go, and anywhere I go in Montana, whatnot, people know me. So it's been a really crazy experience. But I don't think I would have ever made it where I'm at now without going through all the stuff that I had gone to get here. But that's kind of like the quick version of it, I guess. But if you had anything,
Sure, I would have a lot of questions. I mean, your humor and your videos also reached Switzerland. That's how I discovered you. And I have to say, they are hilarious. And especially for me, because I know Montana. I've spent a long time in Montana, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's so accurate. It's so funny. So thank you so much. Really, you're making my days with this. Um, I know a couple of people that were in prison, and I'm just curious. Overall, would you say it was a good experience in a way, or was it like really horrible? Or when you look back at that time,
I would say it's a mixture of all of that. When I first got to prison, I went into prison still thinking I was like this street thug. Um, I still, I was really cocky, and I learned that that doesn't get you anywhere fast in prison. And the amount of tough guys there are in prison, it's uncountable. So I learned that was not going to be a good avenue for me to take. And so, I mean, I wouldn't say it was all out horrible, though. I mean, I know prisons in different places are probably much worse. Montana, I would say, is probably like maybe a lighter version of what I've heard from other places. But you still go through a lot of the emotional loneliness and all of that stuff. Coming from the lifestyle I came from too, I wasn't like I would say I didn't grow up as a criminal, whereas a lot of the people I was in prison with, they were life criminals. But here I am, kind of just got into this. And one of the before I went to prison, though, like I said, I was really, I think I had, I had been on like depression medications and things like that. And when you go to prison, you can't get anything like that. So you kind of have all this time, and you can either, I think, fall apart, or you can work on it yourself. So I always tell people, it wasn't the funnest experience, but I can't imagine what my life would be like if I didn't go through that, because I was so mentally unstable and I was fragile, and it really built so many strengths in my emotions and how I think about things that I don't regret it. I mean, I have regrets committing the crimes and stuff, but man, the experience for me, I feel like it was worth it. It made my life go from feeling like this hard thing to do to, I don't know, I feel like it's just kind of I don't it I don't it like I wouldn't say it's I'm happy all the time, but my life is just easier, it feels like. And it's because I went through those hardships. And so yeah, like I went to the Hole for 30 days, and the Hole in Montana State Prison, it is, they don't give you anything. You don't have a book, you don't have paper. You basically have a pair of shorts, they give you a sleeping mat, and you don't have anything else. So you can only imagine 30 days with yourself. There was points where I feel like maybe I had, I guess, like emotional breakdowns and things like that. But what happened was I learned how to deal with them during that time. So yeah, it was a horrible experience, but it was also a good experience for, I guess, for me. And I've seen people go in and not make changes. Lots of people do it. You know, they just kind of keep that. You know, there's drugs, there's crime inside prison. You know, that's. I mean, there was people drinking hand sanitizer, and it was like, you know,
What?
so
Crazy.
I mean, I saw some pretty crazy stuff in prison, and I just never thought people were capable of some of that. And you know, I think it was kind of, I would say it's funny because it's like the big muscular guys with tattoos, they're not the scary ones in prison. It's the little quiet guy with a little glasses. They're the scary ones.
Ah, good to know. Well, so like the quiet ones, right?
Yeah.
Hmm. Did you ever get into, some dangerous situation, like physically?
Oh yeah. I got, like I said, when I first got to prison, I was still really hot headed. And you know, thought I was like this tough guy.
Hmm.
But there again, I didn't get beat up myself or anything really badly. I mean, I had some scraps, but I seen people get really, really beat up. And the problem with I learned really fast is they don't help you medically. So you break a bone or something like that, you're lucky if they bring you to the doctor to get that fixed. Or if you get your teeth knocked
Oh,
out, you're gonna deal with your teeth knocked out. You know, so I was like, the last thing I wanted to do was get hurt in prison.
yeah. So
So
no pain medication, none of that?
they do, but like it takes a lot. I mean, I saw people get injured pretty bad, and they you know they won't. I mean, it's got to be pretty visibly bad. If it's a teeth thing, they won't help you because you can live without your teeth.
Hmm.
So I think if it's not life threatening, they don't really do much for you, especially if it's during a fight or something like that. So it's definitely not a route somebody wants to take while they're in there.
Wow. Wow, that must be a really difficult feeling when you get in there. You're still addicted, right? So
Oh
you
yeah,
have to go through some kind of withdrawal,
oh
but you
yeah.
have to deal with yourself mentally. How did you navigate through like all this, I don't know, I guess doubt and fear and guilt maybe? I don't know. How did you do that mentally? Do you
Yeah.
do you have like some kind of instructions for people that are going through something like that?
Not at all. For me, it was kind of grasping at straws. I really learned at that point you just had to start taking it day by day. When I got arrested and got put in jail, at the very beginning, I was not only addicted to opiates, I was actually drinking at that time, and I smoked cigarettes. And so opiate addiction or opiate detox it's a really hard thing to go through. And I remember there was basically about 14 days of where I just kind of rolled around in my bed and sweat and didn't eat. And you know, you're shaking, you're having these nightmares, and but there's not much you can do. You just have to go through it, you know. And like I said, after the physical part of the detoxing was gone, I just started like I said, living day by day. You just, if I can make it until tomorrow. And then when I started to try to build myself up mentally, I was grasping at straws. I read the Bible. I came from a Catholic family, so you know I did. You know, I kind of went that route for a while. But then I also asked myself at one point was I wanted to know how I ended up here. You know, I was educated. You know, not to say that educated people can't make mistakes or anything like that, but I really set out to find out. You know, how did I get there? How did this all happen? So I started studying everything. I started studying psychology. I started studying the human body, how the mind works, philosophy, and started to just try to learn everything I could because I wanted to understand like what happened. How did I get here? So, and I think it's not like I really found an answer in the books or whatnot, but I started finding out basically who I was and why I acted the way I did. I mean, I even read things about how your hormones can control your actions throughout the day, and how it's important to balance those and whatnot. And so, a little bit of everything kind of added up to becoming, like I said, more self-aware and you know, um, living in the moment of where you're at in life, I guess, is important.
Right. Yeah, that would have been my next question if there was something you believed in, like God or however you want to call it, right? Just like the great mystery or the so there was. Like, did
Yeah,
you, I guess, right? That's how I understood. Like, did you have the feeling that you like could communicate to like a higher force of some sort, or was it more like a feeling or just a belief?
I
I don't
think
know.
in my like before I went to prison stuff, I kind of had more of that. Like I said, I grew up Catholic, so I kind of had that where you pray to God and whatnot. And I wouldn't say that I don't still do that because I do, but I think it became more of just a spiritual awakening of being where I am alive in my surroundings. And I don't think I would say that I would like directly was talking to like God or speaking to God or whatnot, but I learned how to I don't know how I would say that, kind of like speak to yourself. And I still have a lot of faith though, and I've always had that feeling that I don't have to worry about myself, and almost like you get that feeling like you were meant to do something like really great. And I've always had that feeling about myself, and I don't know if that's like a kind of like a cocky feeling or what you would call it, but I always kind of fell back on that, like, this isn't me. What I did to get into prison, that wasn't me. That wasn't what my life was about. That's not my story, but it is a part of my story, and it was a part of why my story is the way it was. So um, I feel like I had to make those mistakes really to learn how to be who I am now. And yeah,
Yeah, life has a very mysterious way. I know all about it. This is so just so deep. I have so many questions. I don't even know which one to ask next. I guess speaking of like being made for something great, what does success mean to you now compared to earlier in your life?
early in my life, obviously, success was making money, having expensive things. That was, and actually, when I fell into that drug dealing world, I kind of got a taste of. I never did too bad. Like I always had pretty good jobs and whatnot, and I always did okay financially, but I wouldn't say I was like rich or anything like that. But then you become a drug dealer, and all of a sudden you are making like this crazy amount of money and whatnot. But at the same time, I really learned that doesn't really make you happy. You think it does, but I was also so addicted to drugs, like I didn't have time to be happy with money. But I still was like, I had to wear fancy clothes, I had to have a fancy car, and I feel like after my whole experience in prison and whatnot, I really learned that success is for me, and I think it would be different for everybody, is just being able to live comfortably and enjoy the company of my family and my friends, and just have I don't feel like I need everything anymore. I mean, in prison you really learn how to live with nothing. I mean, you get two pairs of sweatpants, a pair of shorts, a couple of white shirts. You get a little TV if you have the money to buy one. And I didn't have a lot of outside money while I was in prison because I came from a lower middle class family, so my family didn't have money to put on my books or anything. So I kind of just floated through, with a minimal amount of stuff. But I'm glad it happened like that because, like I said, I learned how to live. You don't need all this stuff to live happy. And towards that last year of my prison time, I learned how to be happy in prison, even though it was such a downer place and everybody's down. And I remember one day me and my cellmate were joking around, and I was laughing about, I can't even remember what the joke was about, but I laughed so hard, and I really caught myself because I sat back and I was trying to remember the last time I really laughed from my heart like that. And it was like all of a sudden I was like, this occurred in prison, but this wasn't occurring before I got here, you know. And I
Wow.
was like, you know, how was I in such a negative environment, and I learned how to laugh like that and be happy, you know. And I was like, well, if I can do that here, imagine what I could do back out in real life again, you know. And it's just a really incredible experience when you kind of learn those life lessons, I would say. So the whole success thing for me is to just strive to be able to just be happy in just with what you've got. And you know, and like I said, I'm a family person. I grew up with a really tight knit family, so I spend a lot of time with my family. Like today, after this podcast, I take my dad for a walk every Sunday. He had a stroke; he can't talk, but I make it a point every Sunday. I take him out for a walk, and this was stuff I wasn't doing before, and how important it is, and how it's just that's success for me.
Wow. Yeah, I really think that hardship makes you really grateful. Not necessarily, but gives you the possibility to become like really grateful for the little things
Hmm.
or like the most important things like family, right? Was it difficult for you when you got out of jail, like the first time after you got out? Was it difficult to adjust again to like the outside world, or was that something that was easy for you?
I think my biggest thing for the adjusting to the outside world was I was so ashamed of myself, and I was ashamed of what I did. And being from a small town and whatnot, you know, everybody knew what I did. So when I got locked up, they really made me. I'm not trying to justify, no, not justify, but like try to make it sound smaller than it was. Um, they really painted this picture like I was this massive like drug dealer, like I was running
Mm.
around like I was like a local El Chapo. In reality, I was selling drugs, but I was basically just selling small amounts to make money for my own addiction. And you do still make quite a bit of money. I mean, but I wasn't like flying airplanes over borders or, you know, anything crazy like that. You know, I was selling, you know, small amounts of drugs, but they really painted this picture coming from a small Montana town that I was like this drug lord, you know. So I get out of prison with this hanging over my head, you know, and thinking, you know, am I going to be able to get a job anywhere? Am I going to be able to, you know, how are people going to look at me when you go to the store around here? You know, everybody knows who you are, you know. So, but to my surprise, even the 3 years I was locked up, I came out, and a lot of my friends and people I knew, I thought, you know, were going to be disappointed in me and whatnot, kind of, I don't know, greeted me with open arms. They were just happy that I had made it, you know. And um, yeah, and I went to a local mill, and I was like, well, you know, at that point, you know, you're a felon and whatnot. So I felt like I wasn't going to be able to get a good job or anything like that. But they hired me, and I worked my way up from sweeping the floors to basically becoming the controls engineer for the whole place, and going back to school and whatnot. And they helped me get there, you know. And I really think it's just how you present yourself, and if you know, I think people really appreciate it if you can make the change and whatnot. So everybody kind of still knows what I did and the mistakes that I made and whatnot. But I think once you start doing good things, that you can kind of like kind of build respect. And I think people really they, like I said, they really appreciate the people that can overcome those things and whatnot. And I've really been trying to figure out ways that I can give back to the community and whatnot. I was kind of waiting until I had a lot of good sobriety time, because I know you can still be fragile in those earlier years, especially getting out of prison. You know, I didn't know. I didn't know how I was gonna. That was my biggest fear: was, am I gonna get out and am I gonna fall back into this? You know.
Yeah.
Like I said, even when I got out, you got to take it day by day. And if you can make it today, you can make it tomorrow. And if you can make it tomorrow, you can make it the next day. And you just got to think about being in the moment. Um, But that was my biggest fear coming out of prison. I would say was the just the guilt and shame and whatnot. But I don't think it ever goes away. I still feel it. It's been 8 years since I got arrested and whatnot, but I still have those moments of thinking about like the things that I've done and whatnot. And but I think that's just something that we all carry. And like I said, if I can just do what's right by me and by my family and everything, I day to day, I feel like then I shouldn't have anything to worry about, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. What are your future visions or like next projects you want to bring into life, if you want to share?
Oh yeah, I've got quite a few actually. I do love to make the skits. People always ask, how did I get into the skit making? Well, that was kind of like one of my little dreams from when I was younger. I used to watch Saturday Night Live, and I used to watch skit comedy on TV and whatnot. And I always really liked that. I always liked the, making people laugh, and I just I social media kind of made that possible. And I just made a couple of skits, and they kind of blew up. And I was like, wow. I was like, and I didn't even know I was capable of doing that either. I was just doing it kind of just as a joke, like this is going to be funny. And they just kind of blew up. And you know, uh, it's just been crazy with that. But I have some other plans of I'm working on kind of my life story as a book, or and I just want it for the experience. I want to try to be able to write down, how it all went down, and how even somebody that can come from a good family, be educated and whatnot, can still fall into that downward spiral of addiction, and but you can also come out of it. And I know a lot of local people that when I was addicted to drugs and whatnot, I would say out of the group of people that were kind of running around doing what I was doing 8 years ago, I can probably count on one hand how many people have made it out of that.
Hmm.
So I'm working on a book for that. I'm always working on skits. um,
Good.
and even though I went back to school for controls engineering and whatnot, I'm actually going to start parlaying myself into some drug counseling, because I would like to do some on the side from my actual job. Um, my brother is actually he works at a local mental health facility, and he does counseling for he does mental health counseling, but what comes with a lot of mental health problems, addiction. So he didn't go through a lot of what I went through in life, but he's kind of an inspiration for me. And he was, he always kind of pushes for that. And he just thinks that I could use um, my life as kind of a lesson, and because I've been through it, and maybe help some younger people and whatnot. So that's kind of another thing that I'll be working on in the next decade or so. But life's hard. It's busy.
Hmm.
Especially my job as a controls engineer. It's I work on automation. I program machines basically to do things, and with the integration of AI and how fast you know different software and different electronics comes out, you got to constantly be learning. So I work 40 hours a week, but not only that, I probably do about, I would say, 20 to 40 hours of schooling every week too. And that's just what I'm learning is, if I want to be good in my field, you're just always going to be in school basically. So yep, always working on that.
Yeah, you're on fire. Really, that's great to see. You just reminded me of there's a program in Prescott called Thundermaker Wellness Center, and I don't know if you heard about it, but they help indigenous people get sober and clean the indigenous way, and
Yeah,
it's a very special project, you know. And I was just thinking, do you know that? Do you know the
I have
guys?
not I have not heard of that, and but that is definitely something I would love. So I'm half Native American. Um, the thing I've always struggled with though is I grew up. My dad, we did like sweat lodges and we did some traditional things, but I didn't grow up on like a reservation. So I've always tried to find ways to connect with that, but it's difficult when you didn't grow up in that lifestyle, you know. So um, I've done some work and whatnot with some people for like the missing and murdered Indigenous women's movement and whatnot.
Mhm.
Um, and I helped out with some things with that and whatnot. But yeah, in the near future, I would like to find a way to maybe step closer to that too. It's just hard, like I said, when you don't live in those areas, and I don't have connections basically for that. I guess if I started putting feelers out there and whatnot, that maybe I could start picking up some stuff. But I'd be interested into looking into what you were talking about too. I just haven't.
Yeah, I will. I know the guys. I made a video on my YouTube channels with them.
Okay.
I can link you to them. I
Yeah.
feel that that would be a really good idea. Um, yeah, I know what you're talking about because one of my best friends is Hopi, but he's a half blood.
Hmm.
And he grew up on the reservation. That's a difference, right? But
Yeah.
still, he's never going to be like a fully respected member of the tribe because he's a half breed,
Yeah.
a half
Yeah.
blood, and that's a big thing. And it's
Hmm.
sometimes it's hard to see because he's doing a lot for the people there, and it's just you're just never a full blood.
Yeah.
So that's a huge topic.
And a lot of people don't understand. There's kind of like so like when I was in prison, going in Montana, there's a lot of tribes here, but I'm Colville, which is out of Washington, and I'm also Turtle Mountain, Chippewa, which is out of North Dakota. So my reservations aren't in Montana. And when I went to prison, before I went to prison, people are like, "You're going to be all right," because there's a lot of natives there, right? So I was like, okay. So I get to prison thinking, well, I'm going to click up with the natives. Well, it doesn't go down like that. You have to be from their tribe. So you get to
Mm,
prison and they're segregated into their tribes. And if you're not from their tribe, you can't really, they don't want you to click up with them. So I show up thinking, oh, I'm going to be, in with the natives, but I wasn't Crow, I wasn't Northern Cheyenne, so they didn't want
Blackfeet, you
anything to,
know.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, they didn't want anything to do with me. But I think that was a different atmosphere, I think being out in the real world is way different than that. In prison, you kind of have people have to do that, to take care of each other and whatnot. So I wouldn't say that they hated each other. It's just they were just kind of tight knit with each other.
Hmm. Did you have to deal with racism a lot in your life?
Growing up where I did, I would say it wasn't like full out like racism, but a lot of closet racism, and I still deal with it. I still hear it.
Mm.
Um, but I never got like beat up for being native or anything like that. But yeah, it's just one of those things that it's around. I think it's around anywhere you go. But where I did grow up here in Flag County, it is probably like a 95% white community.
Mm.
So, but at the same time, it's just kind of a lot of like I said, small town vibe. So it's like I don't think the people are so much like I, it's not. I wouldn't say that they're so much like hateful racist, but it's just never been around. So it's like they just don't know, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Mm.
Yeah. So a lot of just, probably a lot of jokes and things that are probably very inappropriate, but I wouldn't say they're just like, I don't know. I'm not trying to protect them either, but I wouldn't say there's like actual hate, I would say.
Mm. Mm. That's good. I mean, I have some friends at Pine Ridge, South Dakota, and
Oh,
every
yeah.
time I'm there, and I spend time also in Rapid City before I enter the reservation, I have experienced like really seriously bad stuff, like
Oh, yeah.
racism. I mean, really bad, and it's hard because you see it happen and you just stand there and oh, it makes me so angry,
Yeah.
but you want to react in kind of like a wise way, but sometimes that's difficult
Yeah.
because some
So,
of the things that have been said are horrible.
yeah. So people, every once in a while on like my skits and things, I get some racist comments.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just, you know what though? I mean, if you're if you're an influencer, you're just gonna have a lot. It doesn't matter if you if even if you're putting out good like good heartfelt, people are still gonna hate you. I mean, it's just. But I've learned that actually, the people that they actually help your content move because the more comments you get and things like that. But I always just kind of thought of it as like just kind of like being ill educated, like I it's just my life is just so much above that I don't even waste time with it. I don't try to argue with people online or you know what, if they want to feel that way, let them feel that way. I don't erase their comments or anything. That's just let them be who they're gonna be. I don't let
Sure.
the negativity bring me down.
Of course, and you don't want to waste energy and time on that, it's just the same. I know all about that too. Um, all right, so I think we don't have so much more time left, but there's a couple of minutes more. I was just thinking, talking about Native Americans or indigenous people and like white people, and I, I've spent a lot of times with indigenous people since '97, right? So I'm somehow pretty close to some of them personally. And still, I've been thinking a lot my entire life. I've been thinking, I think what it is about today is that we kind of, oh, how do I put that now? It's also a very sensitive topic every time. That we maybe don't think so much about who's indigenous and who's not, and how many percent of, how high is your percentage of indigenous blood and not, and all of that. But like that, we kind of come together,
Yeah,
also like the white people and the indigenous people and the Asian people and the black people, it doesn't matter. And like that, we all come together and just like focus on what we have in common and what
yeah,
we can change in the world instead of just always focusing on what separates us and what
yeah,
makes us different, and that I think that's so important today.
yeah. And that's a good lesson of like what I was saying with like going back to like addiction and whatnot is when I was out like running around in the streets and stuff, I can tell you that addiction is not, there's nothing to do with race or who you are or how smart you are or how dumb you are or if you grew up in a mansion or if you grew up in a trailer park. Um, I sold drugs to some people that you wouldn't even imagine, like, people with high like jobs in the community and things like that. But it's just, it doesn't discriminate. So
So,
that was one thing I really learned is like, we're all human and we all make mistakes and we all have our, our problems and we all have our happiness and, but like you said, it's, we're all on this world together. So why waste your time being negative? Why waste it? Um, yeah, it's just a waste of time.
right. And I think we really have a lot to solve and a lot of to make better. And just, I just wish we focus on the right things in this time and just get together and stop fighting and, all that. Hey, if you, at the end of your life, I'm just thinking about that now, what would you want people, the one thing that you would want people to remember about you?
For me, and I've thought about that, and that's actually one thing that helped me make some changes in my life was um, if I was to die tomorrow, I didn't want to be remembered as like a drug addict or anything like that. Um, I just want to be remembered as a good person. That's it. Like, you know, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. All right. Jonas, is there anything else you want to share with the world? Anyone listening?
Not at the moment. I mean, if anybody's interested, they can always follow me. I'm sure I'm gonna do. I do comedy skits, but I'm also throwing in some everyday things. Kind of like just the reality of how of life and whatnot. Some little snippets here and there, and I just hope everybody can get a good laugh out of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I do. And you know what my personal favorite is? Which one? Just saying for everyone, go check it out. It's the deer. The deer.
Yeah.
I watched it like 20 times, and every time I watch it, I just burst out laughing. Seriously.
Oh
This is
yeah.
so true. This is just, oh, it's so good. I think I'm going to watch it right after the podcast another time.
Well, thank you for the support. Thank you.
No, really, it's absolutely amazing. So, Jonas, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your voice. And thank you to everyone listening to Voices That Matter. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for having me.